Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our July 1st Friday Cup program. This is the next to the last program for our 19th season. So thank you all for coming. Thank you for continuing to support our program. I'm Mary Ellen Brannigan. I was past president of our organization, and Marcy had other things she had to do this morning, so I'm subbing for her. As a reminder, if you need religious continuing education, please sign the paper at the desk. And also, please turn off your cell phones or put them on silent so that it won't be disruptive if they go off. A little kind of teaser for you. We have completed our schedule for next season. It's our 20th anniversary. We'll have our trifolds and posters next month, but we didn't have enough time to get them to the printer for now. But I'll give you a little preview of some of the folks that are going to be coming. We're going to lead off in September with Dr. James Kravick from Mercy Health. He's their Chief Clinical Officer. I'm sure you've all seen him on TV. He did all the stuff with COVID and whatnot, but he's going to talk. In October, Father, don't tell him I did this, Bishop Bonner, not Father, is coming. In November, we're having a Sister Valerie Lucky. She is the director of, and again, if I'm mispronouncing, EMOS Ministries. She's from up in Erie, Pennsylvania, and she's a very dynamic speaker. We've watched some of her YouTube videos, so I think she's going to be really good. We have Sister Jeannie Turin, a Humility of Mary sister from Cleveland. She does mime, and she is going to do Jesus, the recipe for life, portrayed in mime. I know Ray has seen her, and other people have, and said it is really a wonderful performance that she does. We're going to have Margie Creatella come. If you know Margie, she is Father Popovich's sister. And she's going to come talk to us. She has written a book. And her topic is, Have You Seen My Brother? Discovering that God is good when in a tragedy. I'm really looking forward to that. Father Jarek will be our local priest that is going to talk with us about wrestling with our cultural myths. We are really, we're fortunate. In April, we are having Carrie Alice Robinson come from Washington, D.C. She is the new president of Catholic Charities USA. It's a pretty big coup for her to agree to come talk to us. We're going to do an evening program again next season. It's going to be in May, and we're bringing back Massimo Fazioli to talk to us. He's been here before, and he's pretty well known and does a marvelous job. We decided to do a couple of evening programs because a lot of people say they can't come when they work because you don't have enough time for lunch. So we're going to try to do a couple of evening programs in the future, hoping to have some additional people come that couldn't normally. We have a David Gibson from Fordham University coming, which we're also very excited about him coming. He was in Rome during the conclave, and he reported on TV. He writes a column in the New York Times. So it's going to be about the 1-year mark when he'll be here, and he's going to talk about an American Pope, the American Church, and what Leo means for the U.S. Catholicism. Locally, we're going to have George Beelan. If you know Dr. Beelan from YSU, he's a retired history professor. He has been to the Holy Land, and he is going to talk about his experiences and trip to the Holy Land. There's some other folks coming too, but that's some of the highlights of who's coming. And at the registration desk, you'll find a paper. It's just a printout paper that has everything and all the dates on it. But like I said, next month we'll have the regular trifolds that you can take home with you, and the posters that we give to all the parishes to put them up. And as usual, we're going to ask for sponsorship for our speakers. Everyone except Massimo. Massimo's fee is $2,000 to speak. Everybody else gets $500 plus their expenses. And I think we have 4 people coming in from out of town. So we pay plane fare, we pay for room and board for them while they're here in town. So we would really appreciate it if any of you have the ability to sponsor a speaker. And if you do, your name will be on the slideshow. It'll also be on the trifolds, and you'll hear about it from the podium. So if you are able to do so, you have envelopes on your table. If you would like to make a donation towards their travel, room, board, or want to sponsor someone, see me afterward. First people up get the first choice of who they want to sponsor. And I want to thank Dr. Ann York Romanoff for sponsoring Sister today. Next month's presentation will be here on August the 7th, and Vanessa White will speak to us on There is a Balm, the power of spirituality to nourish and heal the wounded and sin-sick souls. So spread the word. Take a flyer that's out at the desk on her. Sister Margaret will entertain questions during the last 10 minutes of her program. Before Anne introduces our speaker, let us bow our heads, remembering our presenter, all who have gathered in this room, and in a spirit of thanks and praise, we say, God, our Creator, you sustain our lives through the Spirit, or through the gift of your Spirit and the following of Jesus. Stir in us the desire to learn, to love, to serve more generously, to act on behalf of justice and truth. We ask these blessings in your holy name. Amen. Anne?
It is such a great pleasure for me to introduce Sister Margaret Marszal. She is a sister of the Humility of Mary. She currently resides in Girard, Ohio. She has a B.S.E. in education from St. John's College in Cleveland, an M.A. in art education from Miami University, and an M.A. in Christian spirituality from Creighton University in Omaha, Nebraska. Her background is truly grounded in retreat work, parish ministry, education, and spiritual direction. One of the promises and characteristics of Sister Margaret is that she views listening as a critical component to growth in spiritual life. So let us welcome today our speaker, Sister Margaret Marszal.
It is a privilege for me to be here. Years ago, when I was director of Villa Maria Retreat Center, I was asked if I wanted to help coordinate the whole First Friday of Youngstown by Anne McManaman. And I know she was one of the founding people for this. At the time, I could not say yes because I was trying to figure out what it meant to run a retreat center. But I am delighted to know that this is continuing. and that this has continued. Next year will be for 20 years. So that's a feat. That's an incredible feat, and that this room is filled. Now, I do have a lot of fans in this room. A couple of tables with my sisters, some of the priests that have come to the villa to say liturgy, and the Youngstown Ursulines. Now, the rest of you can introduce yourselves, but those I know for sure. So thank you for coming and supporting me. It makes a big difference. I first entitled this How to Live a Discerning Life, but I was asked like a year ago. So the more that I thought about it, I changed the title to Living a Reflective Life. Because I think sometimes when we hear the word discernment, it's always like, I've got to make a decision. And sometimes people see discernment as, should I go to Florida or should I go to Denver for my vacation? That's really not what discernment is. But I think in today's day and age, it is important that we reflect on what's going on in our life, not in a narcissistic kind of way, but in a way that we can move from our center for the true person that God has made us to be. Our culture is bombarded by high tech, iPads, phones, videos. What is going on with our jobs, our families, the news? It's quite different than when many of us were growing up. If I remembered, if we had 3 TV channels, that was it. You played games on Sunday, and then you visited your relatives. And if you had a car, you were lucky. That tells you how old I am. But I think it's important to note in today's culture, we are bombarded visually, auditorily, and actually from the news. It's not that you shouldn't watch the news, but I think what happens is we not only get bombarded by the news, but all the commentaries. So who do you believe? Who do you trust? So you almost have to refrain sometimes. I kind of use one channel maybe for half an hour just to make sure I'm up on the news, but sometimes it can become overwhelming. And what's the problem with becoming overwhelming is we can lose hope. So I think sometimes it's important to listen to what's going on inside of me, to know what's out there, what's in here, and how can I best react to what's going on. So how do you go through the cacophony that surrounds us? Throughout my life, I had many people who taught me how to listen to myself. When I was a junior in college, those of you that are familiar with the Cleveland Diocese, Father Nelson Callahan was not only my teacher at St. Peter High School, but he was my teacher at St. John's College, so I was imbued with Nelson Callahan. But he talked to us about co-reflection. Think about what you're thinking about, what you're thinking about. And as a high school student, I had no clue what I was thinking about. But as I grew older, it was like you have to stand back and see what's going on. Not what's going on out there, but what's going on inside of me. Some of you might have participated in the Life's Healing Journey retreats that were at the Sacred Heart Retreat House. How many of you were ever involved in that? Okay, there's a group of you here. Did a lot with grief work. How do you get in touch with the grief in your life? How do you deal with it? And it was and then some of us, I remember HMs, we went and we got trained to be life healers. And it was a really powerful experience in my own life. I also did a lot of reading on the Christian mystics. I had gone to some retreats at the Christian Life Center in Cleveland, which is now closed. But they had a number of retreats on the Christian mystics, so I got involved in reading them. And I think, I don't know if any of you have read Teresa of Avila, but for a while I was trying to figure out which mansion I was in, the first one, the second one, the third one, the fourth one, the fifth one. And then I met this one priest that was a friend of my brother's, and he says, the interior castle is really inside of you. You just have to be opened up to it. And that made a lot of sense to me, because I think we think that God is out there, and truly God is in here. And all I have to do is become awakened to the fact that God is in here. At Creighton University, I had a master's degree in Christian spirituality and also certification in spiritual direction. I learned a lot about St. Ignatius of Loyola and the Ignatian exercises. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that, but you need a whole course in trying to understand them. And if you try to read the book, forget it. So I'm going to do a simplified version of that. So my hope in this presentation is to present a practical approach to learning how to listen to yourself and how God is present all around you. So we're going to begin with a poem. You have looked at so many doors with longing, wondering if your life lay on the other side. For today, choose the door that opens to the inside. Travel the most ancient way of all, the path that leads you to the center of your life. No map but the one you make yourself. No provision but what you already carry, and the grace that comes to those who walk the pilgrim's way. Speak this blessing as you set out, and watch how your rhythm slows, the cadence of the road drawing you into the pace that is your own. Eat when hungry, rest when tired, listen to your dreaming. Welcome detours as doors deepen in. Pray for protection, ask for guidance, offer gladness for the gifts that come, and then let them go. Do not expect to return by the same road. Home is always by another way. And you will know it, not by the light that waits for you, but by the star that blazes inside you, telling you where you are is holy, and you are welcome here. And if you're not familiar, this is one of the poems by Jan Richardson. She's a wonderful, wonderful poet. So what does it mean to go inside? What does it mean to journey? I did a lot of talks. The hard part with this presentation is I've done too many talks. So I was trying to, how do I consolidate this down? So I want to talk a little bit about a pilgrimage. A pilgrimage is where you leave home, and there's different versions of pilgrimages, but just say you're leaving home, you leave things behind, and you want to go to a new place to try to discover something, but you have no idea what it is that you want to discover. So basically you go there with an attitude of heart. What do I want to hear? What do I want to see? And then you meet different people along that journey. And they kind of give you insight. I have to tell you one story. I was on a pilgrimage once. My brother was big on having pilgrimages. So this one guy, he was convinced he was from the island of Guinea, and he wanted to make kielbasa on the island of Guinea. That was his insight on his pilgrimage. Now, I'm not saying you need to make kielbasa on Guinea, but sometimes we come up when we're away to let ourselves let go of the everydayness and the busyness, that ideas and dreams come forth. So, you mentioned Dr. Kravick coming. Dr. Kravick and his wife and one of our sisters and some other friends went on to Camino de Santiago. I think some of you are familiar with the Camino that's in, you go from France to Spain and you end up at the Church of St. James. Now they did it the nice way. They went to 5-star hotels and they only walked for 40 miles. So that's the way to do the Camino if you want to do it. But one of the things that they noticed on the Camino is that there was a lot of young people there, and they were really trying to figure out, what do I want to do with my life? What's the next step? And I think sometimes as we age, we forget that we can do that too. What do I want to do with my life? What's the next step? It's not the same as when I'm 20, but there's something about where is God meeting me at this stage of my life. So, Sabbath, next slide. I'm going to talk about Sabbath space. And Sabbath space is really like a mini pilgrimage, but it's to give yourself time away. And it can be 20 minutes, it can be an hour, it could be, we used to have them at Our Lady of the Pines when I was working down there. We had it for a day. Or sometimes it could be for an overnight, or you could do 3 days on a weekend. But a Sabbath space is where do you go to quiet yourself down and listen to yourself? Now that might seem redundant, you listen to yourself all the time, but do you really listen to yourself? The purpose for a Sabbath day is to recenter myself in God, to get a bigger perspective, to ask for help. So my question to you is, and this is always lethal after you eat lunch, but where do you go to pray? Where do you go to listen to yourself? It might be on your porch with a cup of coffee, or in church, or on a beach. Where do you go just to muse? My father used to like to fish, and I'm convinced, you can prove me wrong on this, but guys like to fish because you can just sit there and think. It's a wonderful process, because what else do you do but hold that pole? And maybe eventually a fish will come, but it's really a wonderful place to think. So take a moment, just 1 minute, to think, where do you go to think? Where do you go to listen to yourself? What's helpful for you? What's helpful for you might not be helpful for me, but where do you go just to listen to yourself? Listening to yourself might not be as easy as you think. I remember going to a Benedictine monastery for a 3-month sabbatical, and I thought, this is it. I'm going to be at peace. And I found I was very restless, because once you slow down and listen to yourself, do you really want to listen? And a lot of times, everything will go through your head like, I got to be doing something. I can't just be sitting here. Well, maybe it's good if you just sit there, so that you can encounter you. Not only encounter you, but encounter God's word in you. There's a story, and you probably heard this, that a man got a whole group of, this was in Egypt, he got a whole group of people to help him in this caravan. So they were going on and on and on, and he kept pushing the men, going on and on and on. And eventually the men just quit. And he says, well, what's wrong? They said, we have to catch up with our spirits. So that's the purpose of a Sabbath time. It's to catch up with your spirit, wherever you are in life, whatever your circumstances in life. So, next slide. The Sabbath allows you to regain a sense of purpose in life, discover how to lessen anxiety. And I'll give you a couple examples. This is my last month at work. So it's like, all of a sudden, I'm getting all these requests, and I'm thinking, where is this coming from? And I'm getting really anxious. And I could quiet myself down, and I realized, maybe I can ask for help. Now that sounds silly, but sometimes it's like we get ourselves into such a spin that we don't know how to lessen our anxiety. And to give ourselves that space away, even if it's taking a walk. Sometimes taking a walk can calm us down so that we can listen to ourselves. Decide upon big or little changes you want to make. A little change might be simply, I get home at night and I just sit down and I crash on the couch. That's sometimes what I do, sorry. But maybe I can do something else, like go for a walk, and it'll energize me. And it'll help me to diffuse the day. Stop speaking too much and begin listening. Sometimes our heads go on and on and on, telling us what we should be doing. And in family systems, one of the things I learned in spiritual direction, we spend most of our lives trying to get rid of all those tapes that we grew up with that just don't make sense anymore, but we still do them. You know, it's like you have to eat everything off your plate, or you should be showing up for every single event that there is, or you have to, if you're not working hard enough, you should be working harder. We have all these little tapes that we grew up with, and at some point in our life we have to say, like, who's telling me that? My mother's not here anymore, my father's not here anymore, so who's really telling me this stuff? Recognize what is good about your life and express thanks for that. Sometimes we get stuck in the smallness of life. So in this country, I have to say, you could say, well, we have food on our table. We have a place to live. We have people that we can go home at night and we're not worried about being robbed. We're not living in Texas where everything is flooded. And sometimes we just learn to lose perspective that what we have is far more than enough. Consult helpful persons. I just had a talk with Father Corda. Before you do these things, you have three 5-minute interviews, and you have no idea what he's going to say. So one of the things that he was asking me was, what about helpful persons? And it's really important to talk to somebody that's helpful, whether that's a spiritual director, a family friend, a close friend, but somebody that's going to be honest with you. You know, we can fool ourselves, but if we have somebody that can say, you know, really, you said this 50 times, do something about it. We need somebody to tell us that, otherwise we get locked up in our own stuff. And finally, pray, contemplate how and where God is present in your life. So those are some of the outlines for a Sabbath. And you can do any one of those things, but the idea with each of them is that you are doing attentive listening. So we're going to do this right now, so please do not fall asleep. I'm going to give you a Sabbath space just to do a little practice right now. In this room, with all these people here, and you're going to quiet yourself whether you like it or not, but we'll see. First of all, I want you to take 3 deep breaths. I want you to breathe in and breathe out anything that's binding you or concerns you right now. So breathe in again. And breathe out, praying for somebody that you really know needs help right now. And last time, breathe in. And breathe out the love of God in you. And I'm going to ask you to do one more thing. With your eyes closed, I want you to try to listen to 5 sounds in the room. See if you can identify 5 sounds in the room. Okay, I'm going to wake you up now because this is lethal, as I said. Lunch is not a good time to do these exercises, but how many of you could come up with 5 sounds? Good. How many 4? How many 3? How many 2? How many none? Okay, now that depends on your hearing. I know, I get it. I could only basically hear 1 because I've got the projector here, but I'm asking you to do that because we're going to do an exercise later on how that can be helpful to you. Okay, one more exercise. This I learned from a yoga teacher who learned it from somebody in an AA class. So this is how deep my spirituality goes. If you close your eyes, I want you to, first of all, notice what's in your head. What are you thinking about? I'm not asking you to tell your neighbor this. This is just for you to identify. What are you thinking about? What's going through your head right now? And nothing, that's good too. Second thing is, what are you feeling right now? Can you identify one feeling? It could be sad, happy, content, joyful. Notice one feeling that you're feeling right now. And finally, what is one thing your body is telling you right now? It could be, I'm full, I'm tired of sitting, I'm sore, my arthritis is acting up. What is one thing that your body is telling you right now? I offer this as an exercise. I actually do this every day because it gives you information. So if I find I'm ruminating about a project, then maybe I need to ask God for some help to get me through that for the day. If I find I'm sad, then I might need to say, so what am I sad about? Or what do I need to do to address my sadness, whatever that might be. And if I'm sore or I'm tired, one of the things, it took me, 17 years of teaching to figure this out, that I didn't have to do the best lesson on a Monday morning. Kids didn't want to be there and I didn't want to be there. But I learned that on Monday mornings, because of the weekend, I can't expect myself to be the best producer of anything. So it gives you information. You don't have to do a big analysis of it, but it's kind of like it gives us permission to say, oh, this is where I am today. This is what my body is telling me. So if you look at the quote, the time it takes to listen and to reflect is an embodied prayer. It takes time to hear what our gut has to say. It has a deep wisdom, a knowing beyond that of the ego mind. Such knowing is not only realistic, but also completely truthful. It is my experience that the body never lies. And I'm saying that because a lot of times we have gut experiences like, there's something wrong here. This doesn't feel right. This choice doesn't feel right. My going to work today doesn't feel right because I just don't feel right. I don't physically feel right. So we need to pay attention to those gut reactions because oftentimes, they're the most truthful ones. Our body does not lie. So I would invite you to take time to listen to your body. My brother teases me all the time. He says, okay, what's your body telling you today? I said, well, no. But it's truthful. If you're not feeling well, don't expect that you're going to be high productive. Or maybe you need to visit with someone, but you'll have to shorten the visit just because you know you can't be fully present. So it doesn't mean that you're bad that you don't feel good. It just means that you're honoring yourself and you're honoring the other person. So as I look at my day, as you look at your day, what do you notice? You may have been a remark someone said that irritated you or something that delighted you. Can you take the time with that or talk to God about it? Did I notice one of the things I notice is whenever I'm in transition, I trip. And I usually fall on my knee or do something like that. I used to lock my keys in the car, but then they have these forward fobs now, which have saved me miraculously. But I had done a lot of moving around, but it always, whenever I do something like that, I thought, okay, you are in transition. You got to go a little slower. You can't think that you can function the way you did before you moved. So start your prayer where you are in that Sabbath time. Tell God what you need, then listen. You might consider, how does God talk to you? I used to talk about God moments. But sometimes we're in see a sunrise or we see a sunset and we think, oh my God, that's miraculous. Do you take time and just savor that? Do you take time to just be in those situations? So part of this Sabbath time is to savor. That's a big word in spiritual direction school. But take time to savor, to contemplate, to listen to what's going on. So I'm going to give you some questions that you could think about. You might want to write one down, or you can make up your own questions. You're not going to do this now because we probably need about 3 more hours for you to get through this. But as I look at my day, what did I notice? What do I need to tend myself? Where do I need hope in my life? What in my life can I celebrate? Now that's a big one, because sometimes we can feel pretty crabby. So it's like, what can I celebrate? You know what I can celebrate? I can get up today. I can get out of bed today. I have a bed to sleep in today. Sometimes we forget that there's simple things that we do that can help us to celebrate life. What is pulling my spirits down? You know, if you're really feeling down, what is it that's causing you to feel down? And how balanced is my life right now? That's a good question. You know, it could be, maybe I need to read more. You know, maybe I need to be with people more. Maybe I need more quiet time. What in your life do you need more balance in? So, we're going to go to the next slide. These are just some exercises you can do. We're not going to go through all these, but I'm offering these simply as suggestions. Take a walk in nature. Pay attention to what you hear, see, and smell. That's why I had you listen to see what you could hear. Sometimes we aren't still enough, but when you take a walk in nature, does anything draw your attention? It might be the breeze. It might be the birds. It might just be staring at the sea. I find that a retreat for me sometimes could be just staring at water. There's something about water that calms you down. So to take the time to savor it, to be with it. A second thing you can do is walk a labyrinth. And the labyrinth is really a simplified form of a pilgrimage. They were put in the medieval temples because people couldn't go to the Holy Land. So people would walk the labyrinth. And the idea behind the labyrinth is you go in with an intention. Maybe you want, I got this problem I need to solve, and that's your intention. And you walk through, and the quieting down and focusing your feet causes you to listen to the wisdom inside of you. Then when you get to the center, you say a prayer. As you walk out of the labyrinth, you integrate that prayer into your life. So it's a simplified version of a pilgrimage. Create art, garden, or bake, or go fishing. Whenever you do things with your hands, it teaches you a lot because you're not worried about what's going on in your life. I remember this one man I talked to, he got a computer job, and he said, you know, when I used to work in the grocery store, I never got anxious or frustrated because his focus was putting those cans on the shelves. It wasn't working on a computer. And I'm not telling you to go work at Giant Eagle, but there's something about physical, doing something with your hands, or cooking, or gardening, or doing artwork. One of the things I found with the art and prayer retreats that I gave over the years is that there's something about just doing something with your hands that frees up your inner wisdom so that you can pay attention to it. I'm offering the rosary because sometimes I think traditional prayers get a bad press. But there's different ways you can say the rosary. I went on a walk with my sister and brother-in-law this weekend, and what they would do is they'd go through the mysteries of the rosary, but then at each mystery they would pray for somebody that they were concerned about. Or sometimes what I do is I skip the mysteries of the rosaries, and I'll say, so what am I feeling today? And it might be, I feel sad, but why am I sad would be the second one. You know, what can I do to help me through this time would be the third one. So it's almost like a simple Sabbath space. And you probably know that the rosary came from St. Dominic, and people didn't have time to do all the prayers of the office that the nuns and the priests would do. So this was like the layman's version of the prayer of the office. So make it what it could be helpful to you. It could be you pray for different people at each mystery of the rosary. You might want to pray, what am I grateful for? You know, you find like you're down today, so what am I grateful for? And use those mysteries to express that. Or what do you need help with? You know, I got the surgery coming up, and I just need somebody to talk to so I'm not frustrated with it. You know, prayer is to be integrated in life. It's not separate from life. You know, it's not about going in a hermitage and not seeing anybody. Prayer has to do with the integration of life. The other thing I would say too is, I was thinking about this, is the liturgy and the Mass, because sometimes people say, well, you know, Mass is so boring. Why do I need to go to Mass anymore? I'm not going to have you raise your hands on that one. We got a few priests in the room, so. But I think we fail to see what's in the Mass. If this is the way that the gospel is being taught to us, are we listening to the scripture? Are we finding a word or phrase that we can take with us through the week? Are we listening to the homily or the reflection? Are we listening to the prayers? Are we listening to the community? You know, we've gone to Mass on TV and watching it on TV because of COVID, but the bigger part is, are we in communion with people in our parish? And that is God's presence to us as well. So I would invite you to even use the Mass as a Sabbath. What can you find in it? And actually, I experimented with this because I remember it was a church in Cleveland, not in Youngstown, but this guy had horrible homilies. And I thought, so like, what am I getting out of this today? And I would pay attention. I would pay attention to the readings. I'd pay attention to the music. I'd pay attention to an encounter with a person as I was leaving the church. And it was like, that's where God is for me this week. That's going to help me to live the gospel for this week. So that's a simple way. So I'm going to do a short review of Ignatius of Loyola. And I'm doing this because what he did with his life. What's interesting with him is he wanted to go to the Holy Land, couldn't go there. Then he wanted to do something, I think he wanted to go to China or something. So he ended up writing these spiritual exercises, which he never planned on doing. So sometimes God works with us in strange ways. And I could probably ask everybody in the whole room, did you think you'd be doing what you're doing now 20 years ago? You know, life evolves. So this is what evolved for Ignatius. He was born in 1491 in the Basque Country in northern Spain. He was the youngest of 13 children. At 16, he was a page to Juan Velázquez, the treasurer of the Kingdom of Castile. In court life, this is Holy St. Ignatius. He gambled, was contentious, engaged in swordplay, and was a ladies' man. At the age of 30, in May of 1521, he was an officer defending the fortress of the town of Pamplona against the French. The Spaniards were outnumbered. The commander wanted to surrender, but Inigo convinced him to keep fighting. During the battle, a cannonball struck him, wounding his leg and breaking the other. Admiring his courage, the French soldiers took him to the castle in Loyola. During his weeks of recuperation, he was bored and asked for some romance novels. Again, Holy St. Ignatius. There was none in the castle, only a copy of the Life of Christ and a book of the saints. Desperate, he read them and found that their lives were worth imitating. He also continued to have daydreams of fame and glory and fantasies of winning the love of a noble lady of the court. He noticed that after reading and thinking of the saints and Christ, he was at peace and satisfied. When he finished his long daydreams of his noble lady, he would be restless and unsatisfied. This was the beginning of his conversion and discernment of spirits, which is associated with Ignatius and described in his spiritual exercises. As described in my class, it would be what moved him towards the Spirit, what moved him away from the Spirit. And it was listening to the words of Christ that moved him towards the Spirit. And when he was reading the novels and thinking of his fame and glory, he did not have a sense of being delighted. So that's the story of St. Ignatius. So the purpose, what he did was he did a very simple exercise called the examen. And you can do this twice a day. If you get started, they recommend once a day. So basically, this is what you do. You give praise and thanksgiving for the blessed moments. Ask God forgiveness and healing for the difficult and painful moments of the day. Having reflected on this past day, you turn to the next day to ask God to show us potential challenges and opportunities of tomorrow. So again, it's kind of like a simple Sabbath. So I'm good on time. I'm going to just lead you through this, but we're not going to, just so that you get a sense of it. So I want you to think about your morning, just what you did to get here. First of all, I want you to give thanks for big and little things. Can you identify anything that you're really grateful for that happened just this morning? Then invite the Spirit just to lead you through this morning, to let you see what occurred, what happened. And I know some of you are introverts and some of you are extroverts. So you're introverts, you probably need about 15 minutes more than I'm giving you. So just do it as best as you can. This is like a little practice exercise. Do you notice when he says review and recognize failures, do you notice something where you were not your best self? So you were short with somebody, or you were mad at yourself, or there's something that happened where you were not your best self. As Catholics, we're really good at saying how sinful beings we are. So look at it in terms of where was I not my best self this morning? Then ask for forgiveness and healing. Oftentimes I like the words from the Our Father, love your neighbor as yourself. And a lot of times we're good at loving our neighbor, but we're not good at loving ourselves. So take a moment just to ask for forgiveness and healing. And then, is there one thing that you would ask God for tomorrow? You know, something's coming up. Can you ask God for the grace to live more gracefully for tomorrow? Or can you ask God for the grace to help you with something you need to encounter for tomorrow? Okay, if you notice, this took like 5 minutes. So we say we don't have time to make a Sabbath space. You just did it. You know, again, time is relative. And sometimes when we take the time, it's like maybe I ought to take more time. And when I entered the convent, every Sunday would be a Sabbath day. And somehow everybody got too busy and we forgot about the Sabbath day. But we're rediscovering it. So can you give yourself a half a day, an hour, a half an hour, 15 minutes, just to rekindle with what's going on in you and how is God speaking in your life? There is a prayer by a French Jesuit, Pierre Teilhard de Chardin. The prayer is an invitation to trust in the slow work of God. We are quite naturally impatient in everything to reach the end without delay, de Chardin writes. We are impatient of being on the way to something unknown, something new. We must allow ourselves to be shaped without undue haste. We cannot rush the finish line without sinking into the graces of the present. Desjardins advises that we accept the anxiety of feeling ourselves in suspense and incomplete. In other words, we have to allow the universe and our experience of it to unfold in its own time. When we simply sit in the present moment to observe and watch and note all that is happening, we can glimpse the larger picture and see where we might be called. Perhaps we might even discern the still, quiet voice of God. So why do we have a reflective life? So these are the last two slides. Nope. We grow in freedom, personal freedom. It's like I'm telling you about those tapes that you got when you were growing up. They last for a long time. And if you're like me, if you have a journal, you find out if you read it a year later, you've been dealing with the same stuff for a lifetime. So it takes time, but you will grow in freedom. Live life more fully. Respond with grace, love, compassion, not only for others, but also for yourself. Grow up as a transformative process. And I think if you think about where you were 20 years ago and where you were again, you don't want to be a 20-year-old again. And then, but you say, yeah, but I wish I had the energy I had when I was 20 years old. Grow in hope. I think especially today with the news and everything that's going on around the world, we need to be people of hope. And if you wonder how we can do that, Jesus did that. The Holy Roman Empire was not a very nice time. And yet somehow he saw beyond it to see where God's presence was in the people. Grow in appreciation of life. Move to action from the center. You might find that as you're getting freed up yourself, you can help somebody else. Or an idea comes to you that, you know, I can do this. But it's coming from listening to that inner wisdom. I'm going to jump to the bibliography. I'm giving you 3 books you might be interested in. There's tons of books, but I just started reading these, and I think they might be helpful to you. The first one is Discerning with the Heart, Praying for Guidance and Vision. It's 23rd Publications. It's a skinny little book, but it's a wonderful reflection. I think the girl is a Quaker, but she talks about some of the things that I've been talking about in this talk. So if you just want a little book that you can use for a reflection book, I would recommend that. Reimagining the Ignatian Examen. If you liked that prayer, there's a whole little book with different ways you can pray this prayer. So I would also recommend that one. And if you're a Star Wars fan, I mean, I've read a lot of books on this Ignatius stuff, but it's a delightful way to look at the Ignatian exercises through Star Wars. But then you would have had to seen a lot of the movies to even understand what he's talking about. But if you just kind of want to switch and you're a Star Wars fan, I would recommend that one. I would like to, I'd like to conclude just with a poem, and then we can have time for questions. This is by Edwina Gately. Oh, she's somebody that you could bring here. I don't know if you've ever had her. She's really good. Often my life is like a spinning top, hurtling through the days. Spinning, spinning, spinning. Savoring, nothing, threshing air and noise. Then suddenly unbalanced, thrown. My ground is gone. My dance is done. Slowly unwinding, I fall stunned, stilled into the steady arms of God. Thank you.
Is it on? Okay. Does anybody have any questions? I'm the microphone person.
Becky, I didn't know this was your job.
This is my side hustle.
When you had that list up of things to reflect on in the mornings, as I was looking at that, and you have the part where, like, we basically tell ourselves we're all flawed, terribly flawed. I think that in the morning, it's also important to acknowledge to yourself what God is helping you do well.
Right,
Like,
it is.
where you're effective, and, I think that's healthy.
No, I agree with you on that. It's just the format of the Ignatian exercises. But again, what I would say with that, it's just like as we grow in wholeness, we begin to understand, like, maybe I wasn't that kind to a person. So it's more in terms of how can I grow in wholeness as opposed to how bad I am. I think as Catholics, sometimes we think of how bad we are or sinful we have, and it's kind of a bad tradition that we've come up with. But I agree with you. And I think some days you just have to focus on really what's good about today. And what's good about you. I think that's really important because sometimes, again, family systems, people don't tell us what's good about us. And we need to discover what's good about us. That's a very good point. Thank you.
Sister Margaret, I have a question back here.
Okay.
Are you currently doing any retreats or maybe personal guidance with the Examine or?
I'm kind of like in an in-between place right now. I was on leadership for the Sisters of the Humility of Mary, so I had to cut back on all that stuff. My hope is to get back into it. So kind of like Anne gave me the stepping out party by coming today. Yeah, I hope to get back into it, yes.
All right.
Thank you for your presentation, Sister. I don't know how else to put this other than since I've been a young boy, I've been very sensitive to the have-nots, the people who are in the margins, the people who don't have the experiences or the luxury of being at an event like this. Okay, how do you address that for people who would never even think of coming to an event like this?
Do you know, sometimes I think we can, I don't know how to answer that question, but I remember this. I'll give you two examples. I was in, we used to have heartbeats, and the sisters would buy, I was in Albuquerque, New Mexico. They purchased this artwork from these Native Americans. And I would say, as little as they had, that's as much as they had. And I remember they were trying to give me all of this stuff and they had nothing, and they didn't have health insurance, but they edified me in terms of their spirituality being better than mine. So I think sometimes we feel, and my mom lived in the inner city of Cleveland, and there was this guy next door, he was a Muslim, and he would come over and do her, shovel her snow. And this other guy, I don't know what he was, but he would come over and pick my mom off the floor when she was falling down. So it was like a real witness to me to say, so who's got the deeper spirituality? I don't know how to bring, although we have opportunities at the villa where we bring different groups in that they can hear different talks. But I think sometimes what we have isn't necessarily what everybody needs. That makes sense. All right. Anybody else?
Well, sister, since I help run the retreat center, maybe we
All right,
need to
you can
get
give-
together and talk
All
about,
right.
because I'll come on retreat for you if you put it on. I
Yeah,
know.
that would be great.
I thank you, Sister, very
You're
much.
welcome. You're most welcome. Thank you very much.
Thank you all for coming. On your way out, remember to pick up a paper on who our speakers are for next month, or next year rather. And also there is a flyer for next month. And we hope to see you all. Thank you so much for coming.